Excellent. Got it. Thank you. Now, this is the first back in person monthly meeting for the SBAU on December 2, 2022. And though I had intended to be there in person, I got a flu, and I understand I'm about halfway through it, and I'm still contagious. So I'm going to do this remotely. I guess it's going around. It started as a very stiff sinus congestion and sore throat, and then it went down and entered my vocal cords, and that's where it sits now. So we'll see how far we can get into this. I kind of like my new voice, actually. Do I need to admit Mike Lawson?
I'm on it.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so the agenda for tonight's meeting is welcome to everybody. Thank you for being there. I intend to be there next month, provided the creek don't rise. The first thing we're going to do tonight is election of club officers, and that will be conducted by Ron Herron, the vice president. Are you there, Ron? Oh, I see he's got up, yeah.
Oh, well, we have this giant crowd down here at the Museum of Natural History, and last time I did this was about 4 years ago, the first year I took office. And Gary can see me somehow. There's a camera on me. Yeah. Do we know if anybody's watching it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, what we're going to do with a show of hands, we're either going to re-elect or actually we'll take nominations for 4 officers in our club. Get my glasses out. What am I doing here as an officer? I don't even know. You know, I figured out why I don't have a telescope. For 30 years, I lifted the equipment of my discotheque and mobile DJs when it was out of my car, and I was so sick of doing that. And I'll see Chuck on the second Saturday, like short parties go through and all that. I just decided that I'm going to buy one from my friend here. This is Mike Hardwick, who's on member. He's back with us.
Ron, could you speak up a bit? I can't quite hear you.
Okay, well, I'm going to drown out the plain people here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ooh, all right. These are the 4 offices. Shall I start at the bottom? Is Tom Cotton webmaster up for grabs? That's appointed.
A webmaster's not an elected official.
Okay, but I do want to pay homage to him because he's a good one. He's also a past president. Well, we'll start with treasurer for Colin Taylor, who is the incumbent and is not here. Would anybody like to run for his job? And if you're on the screen, raise your hand. Otherwise, with a show of hands, we're going to vote either for re-electing him or kicking him out. He's our treasurer. He's in cahoots with the money. Ladies and gentlemen, for Colin, do you want him to be treasurer for the new year?
Aye.
Overwhelming pass. Excuse me. Tessa Flanagan was doing notes for us at meetings, board meetings. Really, that's the best secretary we've ever had. It was temporary and voluntary. He's now got other things happening to her. So if anybody would like to volunteer to show up at our second Saturday of the month board meetings and take the notes. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. McPartland volunteered. Tessa, we may, she's going to be out of contention. Maybe she'll show up for meetings, but I think she's got health problems.
Actually, Ron, Tessa said that she could be nominated for anything like
I noted that.
I think Tess is willing to take on that position with modification to the role, defined role. But we're going to meet her requirements. So we can elect her to be secretary.
We can elect her and then she can just take a long break until her health gets better. Is that what you're saying, Jerry?
Yes. Yeah, I think she's got the flu too.
But in the interim,
To take the notes, take the
next Saturday.
minutes. Well, then how does the vote handle that? Are you guys going to be temporary or Tessa will have?
I'm not entirely sure if that's what I want to do. Yeah, I think she does. I think she wanted it. It's fine. The last email, it's hard to tell from the tone of the email because you don't get the interaction, get face to face.
Mr. President, why don't we tell Tessa that in the future, she's definitely going to be welcome. In the meantime, we have volunteers to run that particular department secretary.
Okay,
Chuck McPartland, who was our appointed outreach coordinator, and his wife, who's the merchandise manager, so.
Could we perhaps have a provisional vote on a provisional nomination of Tessa? Should she choose to accept? Is that something that the bylaws would allow?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
She's not on board, is she? She's watching?
She's not on.
So let's vote to make an offer to Tessa to be secretary.
I didn't quite get that. An offer?
Okay,
Yes. An offer. Make an offer. Yeah. So competing between you two?
No, let's take a vote.
Okay, make her permanent secretary, even though she'll be on the hiatus.
Making it optional for her, should she decide she wants to be.
If she wants to do it, do we approve? If she wants to do it,
yes,
yeah.
Okay, so show of hands on that.
my hand is up.
Okay, that is passed.
Okay, now we're up to vice president.
Yeah, let's throw that guy out.
No.
Responsible for booking your speakers, except for tonight, when I couldn't get any speakers except for the president, who's gonna talk to us about his new Astronomy in the backyard. And then I'm just gonna throw some at you. And then what's my other duty? Running this, and the speakers, and pretty much that's it. Election, Ron Herron for president again?
Vice President.
Vice President. Mr. President, I almost.
Can't quite hear you again.
Yeah.
I assume you nominated yourself and I vote for it.
Okay, all right, thank you. And that's passed. President Jerry Wilson again, or does somebody want to volunteer for presidency?
Jerry's a great president.
I think he is. I think he's the best myself. But we're not supposed to add libs. So let's vote for president. Jerry Wilson for another year until next December. Thank you very much. New board is pretty much the old board.
Okay, thank you very much. Any announcements? I don't know exactly who's in the room, but do we have the merch manager able to make a report?
We do.
Thank you, Jerry. Hello, everyone. My name is Pat McPartland. I am the club's merchandise manager. I sell branded club items like mugs, patches, totes, blanket for cold winter nights. We have blankets that have a cool logo on them that is actually the club logo. Nice size. They're very warm. The blankets are $30. And they're very warm, and somebody asked just now. But you can see all the items that I sell on the website, SBAU.org, under store. I do not ship though. I would meet you at the Recovery Plaza in Santa Barbara or the Camino Real Marketplace in Goleta. So anyway, send me an email. It's merch, mgr@sbau.org with your order. And if there's no questions, I'm going to give it back to Jerry. All right. The mugs are $10.
I don't know where they are. I don't see them here.
Thank you, Pat.
I have this. She might.
Do we have Colin in there?
No.
Is that a no?
No.
No colon? Okay, and I know Tessa's not there. Is Tom Whittemore there to make any comments on the newsletter?
No.
Okay. No newsletter comments?
There's just the one microphone up there in front.
Okay. So now we're going to have Chuck run down the upcoming outreach.
Okay, Jerry, Tessa is trying to come in and join the meeting, but for some reason she's not getting on. I don't know if she has the updated link for the hybrid meeting.
There's some people that are on the YouTube channel, so I just popped on to give them the Zoom link. Maybe we should give them a minute or two.
Okay, some people were on the YouTube channel according to Krissie, and she just sent them a link for them to maybe get onto the Zoom. We'll see.
We'll see, we'll see.
Anyway, for outreach, it's a quiet month. We have tonight, of course, the meeting, and then on the 6th, Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month for this year, so Telescope Tuesday, but for next year, keeping up with the moon, we're going to move to the 4th Tuesday of the month, starting in January. Then it's not really outreach, but it's something cool people might want to watch, is on Wednesday the 7th at 6:30, the moon is going to occult Mars, so you can watch Mars disappear. And then at 7:30, an hour later, it's going to pop out from behind the moon. Joe's asking if it's a celebrity's birthday. No, it's some one of these mythical heroes, I think superheroes that have a birthday. Sean Kelly, that's right, it's Sean Kelly's birthday. Okay, and then on the 10th, second Saturday, is the star party here, the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History star party. Planning meeting at 5 o'clock, and then the public observation from 7 p.m. to 10. And then we have an event at Peabody School on Thursday the 15th. I put it down as starting at 5 p.m. The person I'm dealing with hasn't been very forward with information, but when I get more details of that, I'll send out an email for the outreaches. And then on the 16th, Westmont, the public telescope night, setup time at 6 o'clock and opening to the public at 7. So that's the third Friday of every month. There were some rumors that we're going to have an AU potluck on the 21st, Wednesday the 21st, for solstice. But we haven't heard much going on that, and I guess the museum has a lot of people out with COVID and they're short-handed. So anything we did would have to end at 5 p.m. So if we do have a potluck, it would probably be at like 3 p.m. And the word was we were going to try to get the McVeigh house, but Javier was looking into that, and I haven't heard anything coming back from him. So those are the potential events going on. As far as outreach this year, I took a look so far at our totals, and in 2019, we had our pretty normal year, 217 events and just under 15,000 people in attendance. And then for 2020, once COVID hit, we had 45 events and only 3,190 people, so way down. And then 2021, even worse, 34 events and 2,315 people. But we restarted outreach, public outreach in March of this year. And so far we have 100 dated events. So that's, we got a couple, of course, for December still to come. And so that's about half the normal total in 9 months. And but we had almost 12,000 people come. So we're ahead of schedule on that one. So there was some pent up demand there. And between 2003 and this year, we have 241,710 people have been in attendance. So we've almost made it to the moon. So thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Now, unless anyone else has anything that's urgent that they want to pop in at this point, we'll move right on to the speakers for tonight. That's members night. So I'm going to show a few slides on building an observatory in my backyard. And then the vice president will host a panel meeting, as I understand it. Can the people at home, can they see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, this is Tessa Flanagan.
Got her.
Okay, okay, I got it too.
Can we dim the lights without, can someone up front do that? I can't do it from back here anymore. Thank you, Prashad.
Okay. So anyway, I call this Goleta West Observatory. We'll see how that goes. But This is the southwest corner of my backyard. And what looks like an innocuous sundial on a pedestal in the backyard, this is what the HOA sees. But little do they know what's underneath here. But this corner of my backyard has a clear night sky in the northwest up to Vandenberg. It's a great spot to watch the missiles go, the rockets go up. But the pedestal that has the sundial on it, when I want to set up a telescope, it has about 3.5 feet of concrete pillar underneath of it in the backyard. And I set a mount up, in this case, an AP, I don't know which one, on the mount. And this is a telescope I frequently use for imaging or looking. This is a 12.5-inch f6 Newtonian. And I will also use, this is how I move that thing around too. I carry it on a garden cart. It used to fit inside of the back of my van, so I could carry it around real easily and take it up to camping sites such as CalStar in October, September, and set it up. It's modular. It breaks up into a few parts that are easy to lift up, and it doesn't take a lot of muscling to get it around. But here it is. We're moving it out of the backyard and we're putting it in the garage. This backyard that you see here is all in the model, in addition to my building an observatory back there. This is the other telescope that I frequently use too. This is a 10-inch f4.7. The telescope is a Newtonian. Focal point is up here. And this band is another set of tube that goes on to block light, stray light from coming into the front of the tube. Looks like a dew shield, but I usually use it primarily for blocking stray light. The other tube that I had earlier shown, this one, it has an overlong tube. It's about 10 inches longer than you really need for it to achieve the same effect of blocking stray light. And it gets very nice pictures with that. So anyway, we took out the lawn back there in the corner and we put in and we chiseled the concrete out because this observatory required a larger pedestal. That went from 8-inch diameter outer diameter to 10-inch outer diameter. And so we had to set a new base for the pedestal. And so we set a piece of sonotube in the ground, and we poured the slab for the floor of the observatory around that. And then we left the sonotube in place, just cut it off at the base of the observatory floor and filled it with concrete, and then put this, what would you call it, for a pattern to hold the bolts in place in the right place while we waited for the concrete to settle. Okay, and here, this is a construction photo. You can see that the entire backyard now has been ripped up. All the nice grass is gone. I did have a straight line that I made out of piece of aluminum one night so that we could be sure that this edge here is lined up with true north. I didn't want to fall into the same trap that the museum observatory fell into decades ago in aligning the stuff to the magnetic north. So this is out of the upstairs window. You can see we're changing the pattern of our deck here. And so the concrete for the observatory was the first poured, and now they're working on the rest of the stuff. So here, this is how we now, once we got that done, and it's all in from the ground down, we started out with making up these witness pole things to see how the neighbors would take it, because we have very strict HOA rules here. And so you can't block the view of any neighbor. And so over here, they agreed to raise the hedge here, have it trimmed 2 inches higher. And that allowed to get me enough room to get a telescope in there. So this is the frame that we had put together at first that they wanted, but you see it's too low. So this is the the biggest mount that I'm going to put in there, and it needs more space. So we raised it about 7 inches on each end, and that did the trick. Here we have it set with the outer tube rings for a 22-inch OD tube for an 18-inch telescope that I'm building. And you'll see some pictures on that in a minute. And you can see that in the first frame we did, it wouldn't fit. So we got up and we got 2 inches of clearance with the frame, and that's where we finally finalized on the build. We designed the thing as we went. So here we are. The frame is set aside, and now we're starting to put together the frame for the observatory. And this is, it's going to be a roll-off roof observatory. The roll-off roof will be here, and it will slide back here almost to the wall. This is the roller part, the roof, and this weighs about 350 pounds, the way it's built. And they did that because I kept telling them that I would come back with a vengeance if a tornado blew the roof off my observatory. And so they said that'll never happen. So anyway, I trust them. This shows a close-up after the rails have been put on and the framing of the roof has been put on. And this shows the inside of the rail. The rail and the motor that powers it are basically the same thing you would have in a garage door opener. The motor is more powerful because it has to move a lot of weight. So we got a design from a fellow in Germany that built an observatory very much like this. And we talked to him about the electronics and the motor and stuff, and we used his design, but we ordered electronic equipment and motor that is to US standard, not to European 220 volt. It's on the other side. You can't see it from here, unfortunately. Whoops, hit the wrong button. And even though this is a year ago, it did rain, of course, when we had the roof off. We almost never get rain, but we did get the rain that time. The next thing to put on is, of course, the roof. Here they are finishing it. We got the 2 very long lead items that took well over 6 months to get are the motor for the whole contraption and the cog rail that goes back there and the metal for the roof. And that just took, both those things had at least 6 month wait time because of the supply chain issue of the COVID era back then. But you can see the garden is getting in there very nice. This is the observatory inside after it's all done. I talked to one of the guys that's in the club, Robert Richard, who has moved to, Arizona, just outside Phoenix. And he recommended a midnight blue inside. And I like that, so I did that. There's light fixtures on each of the 4 walls that has a red light, a dim red light, and a dim white light in it, with switches inside here. And the floor is the soft rubber padding that you would get in a gym. That gives my eyepieces a reasonable chance of surviving if I drop them. So this is one end of a tube that on the 18-inch. This is where I was fitting the tube to build the 18-inch. I ground the mirror, I got the secondary mirror, and putting it together, this shows and I bought a carbon fiber tube. This is 22 inches OD, and the tube is 6 feet long, 72 inches. And I had some parts machined to hold the mirror. This holds the mirror cell up. And we're putting it together, trying the fits and everything. This is the secondary for the 18-inch mirrors of telescope. This is 5 inches. It's an elliptical diagonal. It's 5 inches on the semi-minor axis here. And this, let me go ahead with this. This is the secondary cell taken apart. And this part over here fits up inside here. And you notice the center part, this center is off center in that one here, and it shows it clearly off center. This is the bottom part of the secondary away from the eyepiece focuser, and this is the side that the focuser will go on. And when you have a fast system like an f3.9, like this is, you have to offset the diagonal so you can pick up all the rays of the cone in order to get a full illumination of the field of view. You don't have to do it when you make F6s or F8s, but get below F5, when you're into F4, you do have to offset a little bit in order to keep from cutting off part of the mirror. Now this is the inside of the carbon fiber tube. I was assured that it would be plenty dark enough, but I didn't like it when I saw it. So I got some sticky back flocking material from Protostar, and I've used that in my 12.5 inch and the 10 inch that I showed you earlier, and it's just wonderful stuff. I don't have anything else that can block light like this does. And not just when you're looking at it, but at very low angles, at 1 degree incident angles, it takes out 99% of the incident light. Most materials paint, they can't do that. They become specular at those angles. This is holding it down because my counterweights are just holding it down on the inside because we were having some windstorm that day and the tube weighs for almost nothing. So this shows the outside of the tube and the observatory in the background. The eyepiece focuser is here. I made the adapter that put it on the tube. And this is the side of the tube that's opposite the eyepiece focuser. It's got some counterweights on it to counterbalance the weight of the cameras on it, because I intend this thing to be primarily imaging. And what looks like a bunch of flowers and stuff is actually a shiny reflection from plants that are up against the observatory. You can see the distorted picture of the observatory reflected in the tube. So this is the tube, and this is the top end of an 18-inch Dobsonian that I got from Astro Systems on a special order. He made this for me, and it just slides onto the end of the tube. You can see it just fits on there, and you let go of it, it stays there, but you just pull it off, it comes off very easy. And I'm going to put tubing around the inside to form the function of the light of the dew shield and light blocking thing on the other telescopes, because I am in a neighborhood. Stray light is not a real problem here, but it can mess up a good image. Now, let me jump ahead here. This is the telescope tube in the observatory, all mounted up. And we had this in there with the tube down with the mirror down here, which weighs 35 pounds. And you see this is 2 feet from the end here to the bottom and 4 feet from here up. And as we were looking at it, the telescope slowly slid down. So this tube set was not tight enough to prevent that. And so, whoop. So we got I got some felt lining, and we took the clamping rings apart, and I had some able hands from the club to help. And we put that in there, and we clamped everything back down tight enough. And it did increase the tension on the tube. And so it doesn't slide anymore, no matter how out of weight it gets. This is us putting the tube together and the mirror weight for the first time before we put it in the observatory. We're holding on to the tube for dear life because we haven't balanced it yet for where it is in the cradle. And we don't want to let go of it because we're not too sure what will happen yet. And as you can see, there's no counterweights on the shaft over here. So we're really taking a risk here. This is the final picture of them tightening up. Chuck McPartland, Tom Totten, and this is my new son-in-law, Jesse Whiter. And this is the thing back in the observatory, counterbalanced and all. And that pretty much is my presentation on both the observatory and the telescope. Right now, the observatory, because I still haven't yet got all the parts to the 18-inch. I've got the 10-inch in there now, and I'm going to put the 12.5-inch in there on a semi-permanent basis until I get the 18-inch the way I would like it. Any questions?
I'll forward them to you. I'll use Mike.
Could you write them down? I can't really hear so well. I see there's
Okay,
4
you can hear
chats
me
here.
now? Can you hear me now? Very well done. I think we're gonna have some questions.
And I'll be happy to type the questions into the chat to make sure everyone can understand.
Okay.
But in case you can't read the caption of the Silly Sands cartoon, is that it? Is that the Big Bang?
That's it.
Okay,
Anyway,
that's great.
big telescope, very happy. New observatory. It's raining.
We can see you're very proud of it, and I have never been out to your house, Mr. President, but I thought you had neighbors all over the place around you. You're out in the country. I don't see anything but mountains.
We'll have the members out here for members night and some different things.
That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah. Now, what happened was during my career up here in Santa Barbara as an amateur astronomer for over 2 decades, I had to make everything modular and transportable. So all my scopes, all my mounts, everything, they come apart into easily handleable things. And the wiring, which I consider to be the major headache to all this stuff, is in bundles, labeled like it's an idiot that you have to tell how to do it, because that's what I'm like in the middle of the night. And so and I ran off, typically run like a CalStar, I run off of 3 deep marine batteries. But now that I'm setting this up in the backyard, I run off 3 power supplies, but I use the same modular electronics and hot hubs and with the other one, a power distribution station on the scope. So it minimizes the number of wires going up and down the scope. I thought I'd show and explain that to you, but it got too hairy to take pictures of it all. So any comments?
Oh, yeah, we got lots to talk about still. There is a workshop that you take part in, I think even more so than Tim Crawford these days, right, Mr. President? Are you on TV?
I can't hear you.
Okay,
Aaron.
I'm just gonna have to drown them out in here. How about now?
I can hear you say the word now.
Okay.
There is a question in the chat on Zoom. What kind of focuser do you
Yes,
have?
that's
Jerry?
it's an optic focuser with a 3-inch diameter bore. And the reason it's got such a big bore is because the light cone from an 18-inch mirror at f3.9 converges very quickly. And so when it comes, the crunch point for it is getting out of the tube. Now that has to be at least 3 inches or 1/2 inches wide, and then shrink down to the size of a full-size 35mm frame. So it needed a very wide focuser, and that's the only 3-inch wide focuser I could locate. I like moonlight focusers, but they make primarily 2-inch focusers, and they do a 2.5 inch, but that wasn't big enough. So maybe they've gone to 3 now, but it was too late when I bought that one. So,
Hey, Jerry. Jerry, what's going on with the telescope workshop on Tuesday nights?
we're still having them. What do you mean what's going on? We don't record them or take notes. I assume that's Tom's voice, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We had some presentations from Robert Richard on a bunch of photographs that he's taken from his place near Phoenix. The name of it escapes me. You can see Chuck Watson there. He's a new, if you see him on your screen, he's a new club member, lives in Santa Barbara near the museum. He wants to start and is starting a 6-inch reflector to grind his first mirror. We set him up with the mirror grinding stuff and a lot of free advice. And what's his name? One senior moment after another here. But another guy from up in Paso Robles, he's a telescope observatory up there. He's struggling with Mike Chibnick, tunes into the workshop every Tuesday from Del Rio or Rio Vista up near Sacramento. And several other people come in, show their work, and we talk about how to make things round that aren't round at the base of an observatory.
And you're missing was Dick Beam.
Yeah, Dick Beam, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks to Tim for noticing that too.
What, I didn't catch that.
Oh, Tim also put that in the chat. I was acknowledging his chat.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, Dick Beam, I see that, yeah. Thank you. So it's active, it's going on. You ought to come back and join for a while sometimes.
Did you hear me, Mr. President?
Pardon?
I guess this isn't patched directly in it with the microphone.
No, it's not patched in. The audio is not ideal, and I have some ideas on how to fix it for next time now that we've tried it.
Okay, this is our
Okay.
beginning here. We lost your picture on the screen, but we knew you there. Your wife's name is up there, and Chuck Watson is on there, and our old friend Tom, also known as Tim Crawford, and somebody named Susie. Is that what it says on the final one? Well, is that going to be your man cave, Mr. President?
Unfortunately, it's a drafty man cave. The intent, the design intent was, because of limited space here, that it would largely function as a storage room for the telescope. And then I would roll the roof off, and then I'd come inside and I'd run everything from a laptop in the house. And we had Ethernet cables strung from the observatory into the room that we have our modem or whatever you call it for our internet local web in there. So I can get hooked up to the observatory on the internet and run it from there. So the intention was not to run it from the observatory, but when I'm working on it, when I'm struggling with it, and which I've been doing a lot lately, then yeah, I sit out there and do that. But you can't do it when the roof's on. So, and I'm pretty tall, so I have to stoop over a lot.
Gonna put a computer in there?
Is there a computer in there?
Are you gonna put one?
There's no computer in the observatory, but I can put one in there. I mean, I just carry my laptop in there and sit down, and then there's a computer in there.
Does he have any images from the observatory that we understand?
Don't think you can hear.
Oh, say that one more time. I'll type it in the chat.
Yeah, I think if there are any images.
There's no intention to put a computer in there. What I have in there is, like, I've had this set up for at least a decade, and I like it. It works great. It's reliable and it's rugged, and it's based on having a sender unit for Ethernet called Icron, and I have an Icron remote, which is at the telescope, and I have an Icron local, which is sitting in my tent when I'm at CalStar, and then I have about a 100 to 400 foot, depending on how far I am from my telescope, Ethernet cable, and I run everything from my laptop over this Ethernet cable. And now what we're doing is putting in the Icron remote is out there, and I run the telescope from the house here, but with a cable strung over the backyard. When I get everything working the way I want, it'll come out over the internet here, and then I will operate it from a computer in the house.
Well done. We're very impressed. We won't need a place to go for our yearly field trip. We'll just come to your house with the bus.
Okay.
All right. Are you gonna leave us? You're gonna stick around for my little silliness?
No, I want to see how you're going to do the panel, because I can't hear most of what you say for some reason.
There's Joe's question also, if he looks, you might have to look on chat.
What's the question?
Joe was asking if he had any images that he's taken from the observatory.
Any images you have already taken in your observatory?
Yeah.
Oh, me? You're asking
Yes.
at me? Not yet. I'm having trouble getting the software for the, what is it? The focuser, the Moonlight focuser. They offer several options, and I've got tangled up between them, whether you want to use an ASCOM driver or a non-ASCOM driver. I prefer using the non-ASCOM driver, but I can't seem to get that to kink up together. So I think I've got the wrong driver loaded on my laptop, and when I get that done, absolutely everything else operates. And soon as it's clear, we'll be having, at least you'll be able to see me focus on stars, and we'll get images.
Fantastic. Mr. President, you did good. Our light guy, slowly bring it back up again. I'll be able to see my notes and.
Yay.
I have lots of images that I've taken before with all this equipment, not out of my observatory.
However, there is a recount on your winning the presidency against people that think the voting machines were illegal. Questions, perspectives, all kinds of goodies. Are we back on? Can you hear me, Jerry?
Vaguely, yeah.
Just a couple of questions to our incredible lady Krissie on behalf of being in the club. Can our guests online pictured up there, are they unmuted? Can they say something if they want?
They are muted. Do you want them to
okay.
unmute?
Unmute them all.
Oh, that's not a good idea.
Okay, keep them muted. We don't want to hear from you guys.
If someone has something specific they want to jump in and say, they can definitely unmute, but I'm not going to unmute everybody all at once.
Okay,
I think we can do it all through the chat room.
say again.
You use the chat room.
Yeah, the chat
Yeah, use the
is
chat
a
room.
better way during a live lecture to use chat instead of unmuting. And
The
I'm
reason I'm up here, ladies and gentlemen of SBAU, is that couldn't get anybody else but the president to do a talk. So I'm just gonna dig into my calendar book, where I keep several blank pages in the back full of questions. And as you well know, if you watch our Monday morning podcast called SBAU Astro Hour, which is gonna have its 94th program on Monday morning, I'm usually the guy that asks the questions, so I'm not qualified really to come up here and teach you guys anything. So that's why I thought I'd do what I call a reverse talk. He calls it a panel, but you guys, you're gonna have to shout it out if you know the answer to some of these things. I was a radio interviewer for many years, and so I'm always coming up with questions. And first I wanted to hit you with some news. This is breaking stuff, but I just saw these headlines from the New York Times today. Anything you want to say about it is welcome. Please volunteer what you may know about it. It's not a question on my part, except more details. Elon Musk said he's going to try for a human brain implant in 2023. Did you read that? Did you hear that?
He needs one.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it for him? The French baguette has just been declared an item of intangible cultural heritage, the heritage site by UNESCO. Still very fattening and gluten, well, not gluten-free, I don't think. U.S. is giving 3 native tribes $25 million each to move inland due to climate change. The rest of us are going to just have to deal with it. I guess our houses are going to be flooded. Deadly little rolling robots are going to be armed with guns and explosives. I think they already had one go off from the San Francisco Police Department. RoboCop will come to life, it looks like. You guys remember the movie. There was a big meteor seen over western Pennsylvania last night, which was seen all over the East Coast. And get this, somehow using a new quantum computer, researchers have simulated a pair of black holes and sent a message between them through a wormhole. Chuck, you know anything about that?
It's just a quantum entanglement type situation that they simulated, so.
Jerry, did you hear about it? Taking a bathroom break.
It's not at all practical at this point, but it's theoretical. It's showing that it's theoretically possible.
We have not proven there were wormholes that will short circuit and shortcut us across the universe.
Right, but
Yeah.
this is showing that there's more plausibility in the concept.
Okay, well, we'll probably be reading about it and seeing it in the news, or you watch it anyway. This all started with my dad when he was a school teacher and I was in his class, 5th grade. I heard him one day ask one of his peers, another teacher, I don't understand, he said, the space, if the rocket's up there and there's nothing around, nothing to push against, when it blasts the rocket blast out of the back, what's it pushing against? I didn't know. And the other guy didn't know either, and I thought about it, well, you know, it's not down here on Earth. And later we learned about Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motion. And it leads me to wonder about the 8 million pounds of thrust on the new Artemis 1 that's coming back and set to, I thought, ready to land in the ocean. But 8 million pounds of thrust. You notice they didn't give it to us in horsepower. My curiosity is basically this: if they had a giant scale sitting under the rocket when it blasted off, and that scale can take up to 10 million pounds of weight, would it show 8 million? Is that what it means? That's what it's pushing on the Earth?
Yeah, so it's pushing on the rocket.
Yeah.
Okay,
The opposite right now, we're coming out of the tail, so it's pushing upward.
all right.
In opposite direction.
So what if a rocket in space didn't have anything, suddenly did have something, and it was had the combined effect of pushing against something and would it be the same? Would it get the same energy?
That doesn't add anything at all, right?
Doesn't, okay. So it would blast off equally, whether we had the scale or the Earth or whatever. That's a lot of, but the rocket itself, the Artemis, can't weigh more than 8 billion pounds, can it? Or would
When you
more?
want it to move.
I thought at first that was the weight of the rocket. Now, if you happen to be standing on the North Pole, which I think you can only do in winter these days, what time is it? What would your cell phone say? So,
Let me make a comment on the rocket pushing questions.
hey, let's go back to that, Mr. President. I didn't even know you were there.
Oh, I was writing a response on cameras to Charles.
Oh, okay. Well,
That if you are out in outer space in a spacesuit and you're just hanging there in the void, and you have a rock in your pocket, or say you have a baseball, and the two of you have together, you form a mass with a center of gravity. That's your center. And if you take the baseball and you throw the baseball as hard as you can in one direction, the baseball will go away from you, and you will go away from the baseball in proportion to your relative masses. But your center of mass will always stay the same position. You will go away from where you were, and the ball will go away from where you were. When you push on something. And when the rocket is firing, it's pushing on the gas. It's pushing the gas out the back of the rocket, and that is propelling the rocket forward. It's conservation of momentum. There used to be a joke about that when because I was in school at UCLA in 1970s, when the first gas crisis hit, and the big thing was conserve energy, conserve energy, conserve energy. So someone put up on the bulletin board at school that was only half the story. You needed to conserve momentum too. And so every time that you wanted to go somewhere on campus, you got someone about the same mass as you to walk the other way. So it was conserve momentum. You have to take something into space with you, and you have to throw it away, and that's how you get going the other way.
all right, and imagine this. You're on the space shuttle or the space station, and you're in orbit. You're not coming back down, but you're outside doing an EVA, and you have a baseball. You happen to see the Earth down below you. Now you're going 17,000 miles an hour, but if you can throw a baseball like a major league pitcher, maybe you can get 90 miles an hour out of it. Most of us throw 40, maybe 45, and you threw it toward the Earth, threw it down. Would it come back to Earth, or would it just go into a lower orbit?
Your 99 miles an hour down toward the Earth is not going to make much of a difference for it. It's also going to be moving 19,500 or 17,500 miles an hour sideways. And you throw it down at the Earth, you're going to make you move up away from the Earth slightly. But what happens is you have made the ball into an elliptical orbit that at the moment is below you, but eventually it will come up and be higher than you. But unless you grab a hold of the ISS and go back inside, you and this thing will always be playing tag, the common center of mass.
Whoa. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. In 1608, Galileo saw Saturn and its rings in his telescope. 4 years later, the rings had disappeared. Why? And John, get that?
Put that in the chat room. I can't hear you.
Okay, tell me exactly how you want to word that.
1608, Galileo discovered Saturn, or saw Saturn and its rings. 4 years later, rings disappeared. He didn't know, right? That it was Ed John?
He didn't even know they were rings.
He didn't know, they thought they were ears, didn't he?
No, it was just something like it.
Because they went Ed John, they're very thin, apparently.
They're 3 feet thick, roughly. 30 feet thick.
Is that right? And just about all the rings were former bodies like moons, were they?
Probably just one big one.
And the rings of the solar system might be your asteroid belt, your Kuiper belt, right? And they had started with something big and strong. Well, here's what I need you to explain to me, Chuck. All those rocks that are this size, asteroids, that are solid, how do you get them that solid from just dust coalescing? There's not enough gravity there to make them as hard as your, there is.
Well, if you want one that's nickel iron, you have to have them coalesce into a body that's big enough to have enough internal heat to melt and differentiate. Okay, and then that gets broken up in a collision.
Some of the hardest things in the world are meteorites, you know, because you have them.
Yeah, but it came from a differentiated body. It had to be a bigger asteroid at one point.
Okay.
So Ron, you get something small together, it's not just gravity. There's a electrostatic
That become that monstrous hard thing that you.
No, that's right about that.
Okay.
So Ron, remember that asteroid canoe where they sat down on it and it was like dust that blew up. It was very loosely agglomerated. So it wasn't really massed together very well. So they could get a lot of these rubble bodies that inert in space, just barely holding together.
Okay, that I might buy as being clumping together from the original, when the solar system was formed. I would buy that. Those hard things you have, I can't see them
Plus for a
prospering.
differentiated body, something that got big enough that it had enough internal heat and radioactive elements that heated up and everything melted. And the heavy stuff went to the middle and then congealed.
All right.
It's like having a steel furnace out there.
Shall we go to another item? We've got a lot here. Well, tell us when you want to know. The closer into a cosmic body's gravity, slower time goes. These time satellites out in geocentric orbits have to be reset.
They're not geocentric.
They're not geocentric?
They're not, well,
They're not sitting right above us?
no. They're not geosynchronous.
Oh, why not?
They're in various elliptical orbits.
What do we have out there that's geocentric, that stays in the same place?
Geostationary, geosynchronous. Those are ones that are usually communication or weather satellites.
Or XM Sirius?
Well, I don't think those are.
Oh, they're not?
I think they are. I think Sirius are geosynchronous.
They have to be, or if we lose them over India.
Starlink is not, but those are low Earth orbit. The geosynchronous ones are 22,000 miles up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 22,000 is where things in orbit would stay right above the spot on Earth. Okay. Has a distant stellar system ever been found with exoplanets around the star like an atom? They've all been ecliptics. That could be a difference. I think the answer is no. They're all swirling at the beginning flat disks like our solar system. And to me, that makes a big difference between the macro world of cosmology and cosmic space and the quantum world, where you get little balls, atoms are like that, right? Little tiny things.
It depends how the bodies ended up in orbit. I mean, you've got moons around some of the gas giant planets that are hugely strange orbits that are even retrograde compared to the other moons.
Really?
So it just depends how the system forms, what you get.
Okay. Hope you can hear that, you folks. Oh, we've lost them all on the screen. Couple of more questions, I'll let you go. Do magnetars, you know what a magnetar is? Horrific.
It's a big guitar.
We did a piece on magnet, I don't know how many are out there, really magnetic. And they have a horrendous magnetic field. I just wonder if they have metal planets that are heavy on iron. They go around, they could. And exoplanets orbiting and so okay, lots of metals. Water, H2O, one of the biggest building bits of life. And it's the antidote to fire, to flames, to heat. And yet it's very friendly to electricity. Have you ever noticed that?
No, not necessarily. The distilled water doesn't conduct electricity. It's an insulator. You have to have salt in the water to have electrons flow through it.
So seawater is conducting.
All right.
Well, why do people get electrocuted in their bathtub?
There's salt. In normal water, there's salt, but if you distill it and have very pure water, it doesn't conduct electricity.
Have you all heard that before? I didn't. Salt water is conductive and it's the salt.
Water does not like to be that pure.
Well,
Water will get very bad.
I know that I've been told that really pure water has really been purified. Maybe rainwater would qualify. All it is wet. It has no taste. You can taste water and they sell it in the stores like that.
Rainwater is not very bad.
Well, if antimatter water were to wash up against regular matter water, in several hydrogen bonds, wouldn't it? When you look at a half moon, which is lit half, and the other half is dark, and it's like a taco shell. I just learned they call that a quarter moon. Why?
It's a quarter of a way through its phase.
A quarter of the surface. There's
No.
Oh,
The moon is a quarter of a way through its phases, through its cycle.
does the moon ever have a half moon phase?
It's all,
That's a full moon.
that's a full moon, really, sort of, but it's always half lit, except during an eclipse.
But yeah, quarter moon, you can only see 1/4 of the moon.
Yeah, but it comes from being 1/4 of the way through its cycle.
Well, I get to the emperor.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I get to the emperor.
I wonder if there are people who look up and say, that's a half moon, that's not a quarter moon. Quarter moon would be a crescent. There you go. All right, I'll throw this at you. This is something that keeps coming up in my head, and you try to explain it to me, maybe you can get it today. Barred galaxies. We're in one called the Milky Way. They have a big, long bar of stars, condensed or very, very plentiful, or we wouldn't be able to see it as a bar. And then the big spirals come off the ends of the bars. The bar, I assume, is going, right, turning. Inside that, what's going on with those stars? Have you ever noticed that when a marching band on the field is lined up and they do a big turn, the guy in the middle hardly moves at all. But the guy on the end has to really go. And that won't work with stars. The ones at the end have to go fast. You follow me? Out here on the end of the bar. The ones hit by the black hole have got to.
Yeah, orbits work the other way around, Baron. The closer you are to the center of gravity, the slower, the faster you go. If you're farther out, you go slower. It's the opposite of a marching band at halftime.
I didn't understand what you said.
You know, Pluto, planet Pluto, I think is,
Farther out, yeah.
it's a fraction of its way around its first orbit since it was discovered in the 1930s.
The gravity station, all the arms of those ways lined up. It has to go across from that side, and then in the middle, it's going to stay out of the shape.
Why doesn't the bar turn into a couple of arms? I just don't understand it. I agree with whoever said, Jerry. Oh, okay.
So it's probably temporary as soon as you get all these other gravitational effects, and when you Andromeda galaxy comes through, everything will get torn apart, so it won't be permanent. Actually, I think that's not entirely understood. And then there's the dark matter theory says that 80% of our galaxy is actually made of matter that we can't see, but it has a gravitational effect on our galaxy, and that kind of holds things why the outer stars of our beyond are moving faster than they should. Yeah, they're not lagging behind.
The whole spiral arms thing, which includes the bar structures too, a lot of that structural stuff isn't understood exactly how it happens. It seems to be more like a traffic jam effect, where it's not the same stars in the spiral arms all the time, because they're short-lived. They only live for a couple of million years and they blow up in supernovas, because they tend to be young and massive. And so what you're seeing is like a traffic jam effect. The traffic jams will move on the freeway as people accelerate out from where they stopped and new people are slowing down. So the shock wave kind of goes backwards along the freeway. And so you got a similar thing happening with spiral arms. It's like a density wave that the individual components are for temporary residence.
Well, supposedly the galaxies we see was turning very slowly, but for us anyway, the arms would fly out into space if it wasn't for that invisible dark matter.
Yeah.
Wouldn't there be some galaxies that could turn on their own, depending, maybe they have fewer stars, just flying without dark matter?
Not and show the rates that we see.
Well, that's always bothered me because I was 5 years old, so 71 years ago, when my grandpa pointed to the Three Sisters, which was the belt of Orion. And those stars are moving thousands of miles an hour. And yet they haven't moved in 71 years.
No, they have.
They have, but we
Not
can't tell.
visually, yeah. They have proper motion. You can probably go look up in a catalog what their proper motion is, and it's probably milliarc-seconds per year or something like that. So you're not going to see it visually. Lifetime.
Okay, I announced this one morning, one Monday during our show that the one stat they don't seem to have is how fast is the moon going around the Earth in its orbit. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Is it hundreds of miles an hour, thousands of miles an hour? Would it be like the Teslas that are
Tens of thousands would be my guess.
I mean, it'd be easy calculation to do that. I can't do that.
I did it on, I came up with 2,000 something miles an hour.
The radius is 225,000. Yeah. Calculate the number. It goes around, what's like 28.
Yeah.
I mean,
Simplified a circular and
sure, well, you can all do it. Looking directly into the sun. None of us do it. We know it's there, but we don't dare. As far as I know, no animal with eyes has ever done it, at least not one that's on drugs or not on drugs. Dropped acid. If we did, would it burn your retina in the middle where it goes back in the optic nerve? What if you just looked off to the side for a while? Wouldn't the side of that on the retina burn a hole?
Well, the optic part of it, is not the center of the retina.
Or it's not? Well, is the center of the retina our center of vision? It's not.
it is, yes. But
Okay.
the optic nerve doesn't come in.
So that's why you come and look at it through a telescope.
Yeah.
Well, I understand.
Use the filter, yeah.
It's always,
It would burn your retina wherever you get it before.
so we
If you
just,
look off to the side, it would burn your retina off to the side.
okay, so all animals with eyes kind of know instinctively not to do it. We're in the hard rate of the mind. It's been that way all around. Do wolves bark? Dogs certainly do, and they evolved from them. They howl, but we've never seen one bark. Doggy breeds, we ever breed with coyotes, dingoes, suppose hyenas? No, that's not in the dog world, is it? Anybody ever crossed a chihuahua with a Saint Bernard? They've done it. It's just that the chihuahua's not the mother. It would die. The mind boggles wondering how they pulled it off. They probably confused to get it.
All right, Ron, how does this relate to astronomy?
Don't make me transcribe that in the chat, please.
Daughter showed me a picture of what she got on. So I'll have to say.
No, I don't want to see that. Hold on.
It looks a little like a stone.
Next question.
That's Canis minor and Canis major.
Incidentally, the figure I came up with for the moon.
2288.
Yeah, that's what I came up with. Well, 2241 is what I miles per hour. IV, circumference of the circle. Countries in the world, if you don't mind, I scattered around. Countries in the world that drive on the left side of the road. It always, I don't say bothered me, but interested me. The UK country, the UK, all of them, Canada, Scotland, England, Australia, Japan, Southeast Asia, some of the countries in Africa. Is it Gibraltar? The English part of it. Oh, okay. Well, that would be a good place to. I've done it across the right side and the student side, left side. Incidentally, this is my friend Mike Hardwick, who has come out of retirement, or he's in retirement, but he's come back to us after all these years. Yes.
I was in Sweden, they did this building on the left side. They had signs up to the cover and black plastic one day. Got them local next morning, they were all uncovered and the other sign was up. And everybody sort of this.
What I'd like to know is at the border between a left side of the road country going into a right side of the road, how do they negotiate that?
It's a wormhole.
Well, we all drive on the top side of the road.
Yeah.
Do you suppose that the people in those countries are more left-handed than us? Can you imagine driving a manual stick, four shift with the left hand? It have to be. If they make them, where do they make the cars to drive on the left side, with the right side steering wheels? Are they made in a special factory at General Motors and Ford? Or can they just change the dashboard?
That's why Tesla has the display in the center.
Well, I guess you can drive the car from the left side, like we do here, but on the left road.
I should go to either side. There's a middle.
The main car is that country. So if you got a Ford van and it's shipping, France, it's going to be right. And if they're shipping, you take like this, and then it's well, I assume they're most of the data over in Europe. It's cars. Well, the little game I've always played with my little calendar book is, do they have in foreign countries? I started this 40 years ago, and I'm trying to imagine stuff that we consider Americana exclusively here, or at least having it start here. Do they have it in strange third world countries like Turkey, India, and East Africa? Initially, I have business cards. Sure, we have business cards nowadays, maybe not out of the real four cards. Retractable pens, credit cards, they have ATMs with banks all over the world. How about signing for the deaf? You suppose they do that in those countries? They have deaf people. You suppose they have PTAs in schools? That's what I'm asking. Do they? I just don't know. Do they hold senior proms in their high schools? In both countries?
Hey, Ron.
I'm not gonna get any answers on this.
Ron, what does that have to do with astronomy?
Nobody said it had to do with astronomy. I'm just jumping around. It's my talk. When you get your talk, you'll go. Then meet on their knees with a ring to ask your girlfriend to marry him. Is that only happen in America? Grandma and grandpa retiring and hitting the road in their RV. Do they do that in Turkey? In India? I doubt in India. It's a very poor Southeast Asia. Suburbs, what we call the suburbs here, where Jerry lives. Do they have nice wide lawns and big wide roads and curves and strip malls in places where people are wearing hijab. What's 111,111,111 squared? Nobody knows.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
You can come back. You're not, you're only halfway done. Believe it or not, try 111 times itself. And the answer always will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Should be not. Left brain, right brain. I'm going to end with this. If you buy into it, some people do. They did something like astrology and horoscopes. I've always considered myself a little more right brain, which those folks are supposed to be more emotional, artistic. Left brain people more analytical, possibly oriented or things like being a teller in a bank, mathematicians. You think you know your own proclivity, right brain or left brain, and you want to find out. I've been told this will tell you whether you have a left brain or right brain, if you're more emotional or more analytical. Simply put your hands together, interlace the fingers, whichever thumb is on top, it's the opposite brain. I always have the left hand thumb on top. Could be. I don't know. Could be. Is being left-handed kind of like antimatter? The antimatter of are there whole portions of the universe they think that are full of antimatter and we don't dare go there for obvious reasons? All right, that's enough, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I just want to leave you with a couple of Einstein quotes. He said this, believe it or not, gravitation is not responsible for people falling in black holes are where God divided by zero. This one, all inclusive for my speech. Einstein said, we all know that light travels faster than sound. That's why certain people appear bright, so you hear them speak. Good night.
Thank you, Ron. And with that, that concludes our business for the evening.
Oh, wait, there was one question in the chat about CalSTAR. So I thought maybe we could devote a little bit of time since we can all hear what you are saying, Jerry. Can you explain a little bit about what CalSTAR is?
Oh, CalSTAR. It stands for California Star Party. It traditionally is held after the first full moon, somewhere around October 1st. And it's a three-night camping event. Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, and they have been holding them at Lake San Antonio, up near about 40 to 45 minutes west of Paso Robles. And a beautiful dark site. It's during that time of year, it's very hot during the day. One time, Gary and I couldn't take it, and we went into Paso Robles and we saw a movie because it was the only place that had air conditioning that we could get in and stay. And so we saw Lawless with Gary Oldman. A little violent for my taste, but we were cool. But we went back and at midnight, and it was still in t-shirts and shorts and sandals till well after midnight. It's a campground around the lake, and they reserve it for this CalSTAR thing. It's after the season, so it's basically abandoned. And we get there, and it's dark site enforced, which means that if you shine lights, you're only allowed to have dim red lights at night and no green lasers at all. If you violate those things, a bunch of people, an angry mob, or the coordinator comes over and talks to you about it. Recently, the lake is basically dried up. but that's not the reason we're there, is for the lake. Recently they've added a second CalStar at the same place, but it's in about April. It's in the spring. The weather is less reliably good at that time, but I've talked to some people that have been to that, and it's been a lot of fun for that. Let me see. Let's see something here. You need more information?
How could you find out more is a question.
It's sponsored by the San Jose Astronomical Club. You can just look up CalStar 2023 and you'll see it for the coming year.
Great, thank you, Jerry.
And
Sure.
it's April 19th through 23rd for spring, and then October 13th through 17th for autumn.
Let me share my screen with whoever's still there. Can you see this?
Yeah,
Okay, this is my friend Gary Peterson and a member of our club setting up a tent. And oops, got to get that here. This is my son helping set up a tent. My van is over here. And yeah, that's Gary setting up things. My son is setting up a G11 mount. And it does get hot. So we were lucky we're under the trees and we have these canopies and stuff with us. So it's an endurance thing during the day. This is our scope set up waiting for the evening. Cooking, yeah, this is a fellow on the Central Coast Astronomical Society, Kent Wallace. He's a visual observer of planetary nebulas, and he's written several books about what they look like. And he's a real bloodhound at tracking down very obscure, very faint, very hard to get at planetary nebulas. He has a 20-inch f5 Dob that he uses. And about 10 years ago now, or 15 years ago now, he mailed it to Australia, then he caught up with it. And he did the southern skies then. This is Gary's MP101. This is fairly light attendance. This was 2009. How'd that guy get in there? And dinner was had by all. Most of the scopes are visual, but this area is what's called dark and forced. And so it's a lot of imagers also. If you want to have some kind of light, there's campgrounds next door to this that will accommodate you. This is Kent's thing. He happened to set up next to us this year. He's a setup back there. I don't recognize that guy. We all know this guy here, Joe Doyle. This was his previous camper van before he got his Mercedes. And this is Paul setting up his visual refractor. And this is Paul's camper back here. I think that's his. So.
Tessa wants to know if there are any women at CalStar.
What's that?
Yes, there are.
Tessa's asking if there are any women at CalStar.
Oh yeah, a lot. I would not call it a singles hookup place, but there's a lot of women that go up there. Let's see what we can. Whoops. Oh.
In the fall CalStar, we had about 90 people there.
Oh, 90 people at the fall CalStar. Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Some of them were actually making pizza dough and baking pizzas in a propane powered pizza.
Baking pizza dough in a propane powered pizza
Yeah,
oven?
making the dough, and then later make the pizzas.
Oh, cooking the pizzas in the propane pizza oven.
Oh, yes, at CalSTAR, let me tell you, there's a guy that sets up right at the entrance to the darkened forest area, and he makes breakfast for everybody that wants some. It comes around, and he gets up fairly early to do it, like 8 or 9. If you stayed up most of the night, you sleep till past noon, at least in my case. This is Gary with his Dobsonian. And this is my doublet with a NP and a Orion telescope together. This is my tent and the back of my van. There we are. This was a more crowded view of the field. You walk around during the night at CalSTAR, and everybody's eager to let you look through the scope. If they have something like the quintet, what's it? I forget, Stephen's quintet. And they say, oh, I've got it in here. Who wants to see? And all of a sudden the line forms. It's not open to the public. It's observers only. So you have to be there with a scope and use your own equipment. But people share all their stuff. There was one time when a Boy Scout troop got misinformed and they showed up to tour the place and they got kicked out. So they're probably turned off to astronomy. So there's an 18-inch telescope on a cave mount, Astrola, that's it. Yeah, this is the guy that sets up and feeds everybody. The big guns. Very ultra lightweight. This one too, this is just, it looks really frail. Now this is an interesting one. This was a computer programmer from San Jose, and he was just curious of how big a telescope you could do imaging from on an AP900 mount. And so this is an AP900 mount here. And he put together this, just threw it together. This is a 16-inch mirror. And then he threw together this tube made out of tubes. And he set up there and was doing pictures. And it was nice and steady. I went over and examined it. It's quite good. I wouldn't put my 18-inch on that, but he was much more daring. I forgot this guy's name. Anyway, this is back to Gary's telescope again. This is a beautifully machined telescope. It's a 6-inch F15, and every single part on it was machined by the owner as a project. So I would say he's probably a machinist with a little bit of spare time. Yeah. This was about 2006 or 2009, somewhere in there. And you can see Lake San Antonio has got quite a bit of water in it. It's nothing like that now. This goes down to a dry bottom, and there's a lot of weeds down there because of the water that's soaked into the soil. Oh, this is the country store where on these hot days, you just go in there and feed yourself with ice cream and Diet Pepsi. So anyway, that's a quick tour of CalSTAR. Okay, well, unless anyone has anything else they want to do, I think I'm going to close the meeting at 8:56 p.m. This December 2nd meeting, public meeting of this SBAU is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. I will be there next time.
Okay, I will.
I need to know. Take a look at our view of the seats. The front row of the picture we're looking at on the screen, that's how